I assume everyone listening, you're the best track and field fans in the world. Like, when you wake up, you should think, my wife, my marriage is crumbling. I just got laid off, but I'm one of the top track and field fans in the world. And you're probably one of the 25% of the people that answered the poll this morning. Will Athing MU ever make an Olympics Worlds team in the 1500 as I did? Hell no. The news that Bobby Kersee wants this, we've got to talk about this article. Can we lead with this?
Oh, absolutely. This is what I was going to lead with, because earlier this week, first of all, it starts out Syndey McLaughlin-Levrone. We were pumping her up on the podcast. We recorded this podcast on Tuesday, and we said, oh my God, this is one of the races of the year. Syndey McLaughlin-Levrone, who never races, is going to be doing a flat 400-meter runner against arguably the gold medal favorite, Marilady Paulino of the Dominican Republic, who was the silver medalist at Worlds and the Olympics the last 2 years. They're going to be racing each other in the LA Grand Prix on May 27th. That podcast is out for maybe a few hours. When the news comes out, McLaughlin-Levrone is being pulled from the meet. She has a statement to Otto Bolden saying it was her coach's decision. We have no explanation from anyone. Couple days pass. It comes out. Bobby Kersee does this fascinating interview with Scott Reed of the Orange County Register, in which he says that she irritated her hamstring at a training camp. She's not where he wants her to be right now, so they're not going to bother racing. They also explain Athing MU. Very juicy details here. She was also initially going to be racing this meet. She was never on any start list in the 1500 meters. And she got COVID a week or so ago. They decided not to run her in this meet either. But then Bobby Kersee goes on to say that the plan is for her to run the 1500 meters at the US Championships this year. And he had some quotes here. I think the goal is she needs to be under 3:59 or better to really get the benefit out of the 1500, and with her speed ability to get the ultimate transfer to the 800 in order to break that other 30-year-old record at 800 meters. So he's saying she will run a 1500 or two this year. They want to work on her strength to give her a better shot to break the 800-meter world record. And then he goes on to say, they talk about a potential Olympic double next year in Paris. And his quote, the 800, 1500, or 400, 800 has been done. And I think Athing has that ability. And I think if the schedule allows it, it would be nice to see for a woman to double the 8 and 15 at a very high level with the potential to gold medal in both. So, a lot of stuff to break down here, Robert. Where do you want to start?
Well, and you left out another part about the article from Scott Reed. By the way, folks, I signed up for those who register for $1 for 6 months. And then it says you can share an article with your friends. So I've put that article up on the front page. So looks like everyone can read this article now, thanks to me. I'm reading it now in incognito. It says, you've shared this with a friend has shared it with you. So read it now before they shut it off. But the other part that we have to talk about is Kersee at the end of the article says, will they ever race 400? No. They trained enough together. Racing them together is not needed, particularly for me. It would not make any sense for me to put them together. My God, that quote pissed me off. Bobby Kersee, the job of your coach is not to please you. It's to please the athletes, the sponsors, the fans, like pleasing you. Anyways, but when I saw this 1500 stuff, I just the first thought, I'm not going to lie. The first thought that popped in my head is, oh my God, is he in over his head now? Like, I mean, John, you give me a hard time for saying that I can coach people and I can coach gold medalists, but I'm like, if he gave me this talent, I wouldn't screw it up. But this guy's never coached an elite 1500 meter runner, right? Like, he just seems to think that he can just move her up. And I thought, Athing MU is one of the top 50 fastest 400 meter runners in history. She's the former NCAA record holder at 400. She's run 49. Help me out here.
49:57.
And I just like, I'm like, he thinks she's more, it sounds like he thinks she's more 8:15 than she is 4:8. And I was just like, no. Now, when I read the quote about the 3:59, I like that a little bit better. I'm like, okay, there's a little bit of a plan here, but I'm like, I just, this isn't a video game. You can't just make someone a 1500 meter runner.
Yeah, the way I see it here, Robert, if his thinking is we'll have her do the 1500 this year a few times, including USA's, because we need to get her strength up. The main goal is the 800-meter world record, and she needs to be stronger and able in order to do that. That's why we're running the 15. I can get behind that thinking in principle. I mean, she certainly seems like more of a 4.8 runner. Kratochvilova, who is the current world record holder, was a 400, 800 runner. She never ran the 1500. So I'm not convinced that needs to be the approach, but I can at least understand that. I'm open to the possibility. But he loses me when he talks about this 800, 1500 double at the Olympics, because Athing MU, her personal best in the 1500 is 4:16. That's from 2021 when she was a freshman at Texas A&M. She ran the event a bit in high school. It's not like this is totally unfamiliar. At the professional level, she's run a mile in 4:37, and then she showed up to Millrose and DNF because she was getting smoked by some of the best milers in the country. I just don't, there's nothing that she has demonstrated suggests to me that she would be a threat to medal at the Olympics. And I think even making the US team would be a very tall order. You have to be a sub-4 performer to be able to do that. And history shows there are only 3 women among the 104 who have broken 50 seconds in history who have even got a 1500 meter personal best listed on Tilistopaya. It's Athing MU is one of them, 4:16. The others are Anna Fidelia Quirot, 4:13, and Casta Semenya, 3:59. And we know that Casta Semenya had elevated levels of testosterone. She's DSD. She's not allowed to compete anymore in the women's category. So essentially, if you were saying Athing MU is going to be contending for an Olympic medal next year in the 1500, you are relying on her being an all-time historic outlier. I just don't buy it. We already know she's world-class in the 400 meters. If you want to pursue double gold, that would appear to be the obvious 2 events to run, the 4 and the 8.
Okay, isn't Athing MU almost an all-time historic outlier, John, if I'm going to push back a little bit? Have we seen a talent like this at 800 meters at this age before? I mean, if anyone could do something defying, it could be her, right? Like, did you guys think Sifan Hassan, what is her 800 meter PB?
156.
What is her 1500 meter PB?
351.
What is her marathon PB?
2:18:33. Yes, she is a unicorn. And is it possible Athing MU is a unicorn? Maybe. She could be. But my logic, thinking of it this way, Weldon, if you're trying to do a double, if your goal is double gold at the Olympics, she's already the reigning champion in the 800, so we know that's going to be one of the events. It took 3:55 to medal in the 1500 at Worlds last year. That's a time, I don't think Athing MU will ever run 3:55. That's a time you would need to be, that would be second fastest in American history. The only person among Americans who's ever run faster than that is Shelby Houlihan, who's currently serving a doping suspension. And Athing MU's current PB is 4:16. Whereas in the 400 meters, you know what it took to medal last year in the 400? 49:75. Athing MU's personal best is 49:57. And that was from 2 years ago. She's already shown she can medal in the 400. She has that level of ability. She's shown nothing to suggest that she could do it in the 1500.
Right. And Bobby doesn't want on the 400 because it's going to mess up. She's going to have to race his golden child, Syndey. I don't like this. I did think the same thing Weldon thought. I'm like, okay, if we're going to defend it, no one would have thought that a woman that can run 156 for 800 could win the London Marathon. But I just kind of asked John Kelly, like, which has more in common, the marathon with the 800 or the 1500 with the 400? I mean, I think I'm inclined to say the marathon with 800 than the 1500 compared to the 400. If you look at the men's list, top 50 all time, 49th, which is where Athing MU is 49:27. So
49:27?
Excuse me, 44:27. Like, look at the list of people ahead of that. There's only one person I could contemplate even running a halfway decent 1500 meters, and that would be Emmanuel Career. He's run 44:21 at altitude. But, like, and maybe we're making a mistake. I do think the male body and the female body are different. So the range might be a little bit different for men and women. I mean, Semenya is the one outlier. She ran almost the same 400 PB as Athing MU, and she medaled in the 1500. But that's someone competing, unless we're going to give Athing MU steroids, like, Semenya has male levels of testosterone, so I don't think we should consider her. It's not the same. She's way stronger than Athing MU because of that testosterone. So I'm looking up Emmanuel career here. He was like 25th in the Conference USA cross country meet, but he doesn't even have a 1500 meter PB listed. He did run that 1,000. Remember in Monaco last year? Good news is
totally fell apart at the end of the race, right?
Good news is he ran 2:18. Bad news is he was 12th place. So no, like we saw her in Millrose. She ran up front in the mile, and if she hadn't dropped out, what do we think she was going to run? Like 4:30?
I think it would have been about 4:25. I think it would have been a pretty. So actually, well, let me look that up right now. But it would have been a pretty solid effort.
Well, 4:25, and she's close to 4 minutes right now. So I've got this thread up, this poll up, and let's run. Will Athing MU ever make the Olympic team? In the 1500, 35% say yes. So 35% I think are idiots. 39% no, and 25% hell no. Now,
well, Robert, I'm just going to jump in. She was on pace for 4:25, but maybe because she dropped out because she was feeling tired. So maybe you scaled that back to about a 4:26 or 4:27. That's still a pretty good time in a mile.
With this whole thing, I was sort of pushing back with the unicorn. Because my first impression, I want to give her the benefit of the doubt. If anyone can be a unicorn, it's Athing MU. But this was like Gwen Jorgensen talk, right? When she was coming over to the marathon saying she wanted to win Olympic gold. Which is more preposterous, I guess. Gwen saying she was going to win the Olympic gold the marathon. And we had Lars, our ad sales guy, saying, oh yeah, she's got the will. She can do it. Is that what Bobby Kersee's doing here?
No. Gwen's comment was way more preposterous. This is the Olympic 1500 meter champion. Sorry, the Olympic 800 meter champion has a better shot at winning the Olympic 1500 than the Olympic triathlon champion has of winning the Olympic marathon.
Okay. Then we had people, but I guess we have people now saying it's possible. Could she make the U.S. Olympic team at 1500? I don't really think that's possible. The hell no. But to me, that's almost more the unicorn territory. But there's a huge difference between being a 358 runner and being a 350 runner. I mean, like it's night and day difference. And I think there's a good post here by Justin Rinaldi. He's the Australian coach of Peter Bull, who was, fourth at the Olympics in 800 meters?
Mm-hmm.
He says, the only thing in MU's favor is that the 1500 is after the 800 in Paris. So the double set up perfectly. He says, I can see her running a solid 1500 in a one-off event like Brazier did. But like, what's Brazier done in the 1500? He's not world class, but not after multiple rounds. I can't even see her making the U.S. team over 1500 meters, and she'd be giving up a chance to win another gold in the 4x4, which we think she'd be a lock-in. Given Bobby's success over the past 30-plus years, I hope he knows more than we do. I think he doesn't, right? I think it's one of these things where you're an expert in one field, and you think, I'll just do this, and you're mistaken.
Well, the other theory is, I've seen this floated, and from an outside perspective, my read on the situation is he's having her do the 8 and 15 because he doesn't want her encroaching on Syndey McLaughlin-Levrone's territory in the 400. He said in that quote, he doesn't want them racing at 400 meters, and he might look at these two and say, okay, Syndey has a better chance at gold in the 400. I'll have her run the 400 flat, and Athing, you're going to do the 815, and that way you guys don't have to race each other at the Olympics. If the conspiracy theorist in me, that would be the reasoning I would expect for him having Mo move up to the 1500.
Conspiracy theory? He just admitted it. Like, it's absurd to me. Like, I get it. The team dynamics. He was working with Syndey. Athing shows up. Like, maybe I can see why if you're Syndey, you don't necessarily want someone coming into your territory, but they should race at the trials and at the Olympics. Like, she should go for the 4.8, not the 8.15. And we're talking about Brazier. Rinaldi's talking about Brazier. Brazier's not world-class at 400 or 1,500. His 400 PB is 46.14. Now, that's indoors. So maybe he's a 45.5 guy at best. Like, he's a long way from top 50 all time, like Athing Mu. And then his 1500 meter PB is 3:35. Like, it's just absurd. And a lot of these coaches and agents, and even probably myself back in the day, you make the mindset of, oh, someone's a champion, they can do anything. And Hassan's done it, but no. Like, remember when Paul Doyle was on this very podcast, I believe, or maybe he was just talking to us, John? Devin Allen will make the Philadelphia Eagles, not the practice squad. He's going to make it. He's a champion. Guess what? He sat his ass on the practice squad the entire damn year. So, like, you can't just make yourself do stuff. Like, when they took the testosterone away from Semenya, she was average at best. So, I don't know. This was troubling to me. And the other aspect of this was, okay, comes out that she got COVID last week. So she now has COVID. So now we have the built-in excuse for the entire year. If she doesn't perform well, doesn't race well, we're going to hear, oh, it's COVID, it set back her training,
I don't think so. She had COVID was her explanation for missing the pre-classic last year, and then she came out and went undefeated in one world. So I don't think that's going to be an explanation. But the one thing I will say, Brazier, you guys are saying he's not world-class. I mean, do you remember how good he looked running that 3:35? He was amazing. That was a really, really good run. It was a one-off. I think Justin's right. Like, in a championship setting, he's probably not going to be able to do that in the final, but I was really impressed by that. But no, here's what I think. Maybe this scenario, here's what I hope plays out in this scenario. First of all, I am excited to see what Athing Mu does in the 1500 this summer. I'm not even sure if she'll make the US final, but I'm excited to see her give it a crack. And also, the auto standard to get into USA's is 4:05. I think there might be a provision where if she's a reigning world champion, she might be able to just sort of bump up one event and they'll let her in the 15. I was looking at the USATF rulebook. I couldn't actually see that anywhere, but maybe they'll figure out a way to get her in if she doesn't have the standard anyway. But what I could see happening is she shows up to USA's, she runs the 1500, it doesn't go that well, and then at the end of the year, they realize, okay, this was a mistake. My best bet at double gold is doing the 400, 800. That's the event I'm going to focus on in 2024. And is it an ideal situation for them to have these two athletes both chasing the same gold medal? Maybe not. We do see it in some training groups, but not usually with stars of this caliber. But there is precedent for it. Remember, back in the 2010s, Usain Bolt, who was his biggest rival? Yohan Blake at the 2012 Olympics. And, Gatlin was a rival as well. But in 2012 specifically, Yohan Blake was his biggest threat. Those two never raced on the circuit, but they did race at the Jamaican trials and they raced at the Olympic Games. That is all. I mean, it would be great to see McLaughlin-Levrone and Mo race each other in more than one 400, but if you want to have them double, there's only two races that they would need to run against each other. It would be the final of the U.S. Olympic trials and the Olympic final. I don't think that's too much to ask.
Yeah, my biggest problem with Kersee, fine, be delusional about a thing's chances. Prove us wrong. But that quote, racing them together is not needed, particularly for me. This isn't about you. It's about getting the best for both athletes. And I think everyone agrees the 4-8 double is easier. The schedule may be harder, right? I guess we can analyze that on a different podcast because the 8:15.
Oh, I got the schedule in front of it. We can get to it in a minute, but finish your point, Weldon.
I just really don't like that quote. Why not? Athing Mu is perfectly set up to do the 4-8 double. Perfectly set up, apart from the schedule.
Yeah.
I mean, these are both in her wheelhouse. She's already world-class in both events. So why would you try the 1500? Just so, like, the athletes don't race each other and hurt each other's feelings? Elaine Thompson-Herah and Shelly-Ann Fraser-Price trained together. They used to. They raced.
I'd like to hear from Athing Mu on this, and I assume when she does compete at some point this season, this is a topic she'll address. Maybe this is something that's exciting her. Maybe this is the 1500 is the new event that's challenging her and that she wants to stay in the sport for. But I remember one of the first things she said after she won Olympic gold in Tokyo in 2021 was she had two big goals remaining. She wanted to win she wanted to break the world record on the 800 meters, and she wanted to get the 400, 800 double at a global championship. So that's been something that's on her mind for a while. And now for it to switch to the 1500, it doesn't really make much sense to me.
Another aspect of this is, can we just admit that the regular season track and field is dead? Like, track will never be popular, and this is the perfect example of why. Bobby Kersee, who is, I guess he doesn't own the meet, but I have to believe he's getting paid to promote this meet. He was announced as, this is the greatest track meet in LA since '84. These people are going to be there. He can't even get his own athletes to go. Now, Race Take has an interesting take on Twitter. He's saying that they're not racing because the appearance fees weren't high enough. Race Take's been wrong about a lot of stuff, but it's kind of interesting. But, like, this is just too much. It's about Bobby Kersee and what's perfect for the athletes and nothing about what's right for anybody else. That's number one. The other thing that bothered me about this is you have this whole article, and it's just like Kersee. Oh, yeah, they can go after these unbeatable records by these East Germans, and Moravia Kalk, East German, Czechoslovakia, German, Krachikova. And there's no talk about how, like, okay, these records were set with drugs. Like, let's be honest. And if I was a reporter, maybe Scott did ask this, we should have him on the podcast. Like, okay, what do you say to fans who are kind of curious as to how we're going to be beating records that were set by drugged up people? And then he compared, I think it was Syndey, to Flojo. He's got the speed of Flojo, athleticism of my wife, Jackie Joanna Kersee, and the speed of Flojo. Well, who is his sister-in-law, by the way. Well, I would have said, Bobby, most people think Flojo, rest in peace, was also on drugs. Like, I don't know, man. Just this whole thing just reminded me of so much what's wrong with the sport. Oh, we're just going to go beat the drugged up world records.
You think Rojo actually says that to him, John?
Well, I don't think Robert will be interested. I don't think Robert will be in a position where he's interviewing Bobby Kersee. I would love to see him bring up that situation, though, if they ever talked. But one thing I wanted to say about this, I do wonder, like, was this just Bobby Kersee seeing that there were a bunch of people blasting his athletes for not racing at this meet, and him just deciding, oh, I'm going to get the attention off them. I'll say some outlandish things in this article, and now that's what everyone's talking about, instead of the fact that his two athletes who never race are never racing again. Because I looked at the explanations. He's saying that Syndey McLaughlin-Levrone irritated her hamstring at some training camp that I don't know how long ago this training camp was. And then 11 days before the meet, he's already saying she can't run, but he's also saying it's nothing serious. I mean, that to me is suggesting she's perfectly capable of running, but Syndey McLaughlin-Levrone in her own statement says it was her coach's decision. She didn't say, I'm injured, I can't run. Sounds like to me, and he said this in the article, she's not at the level where I want her to be right now. She might be able to run. She's not quite 100%. She'd probably lose to Paulino if they raced up and ran right now. And then the Athing MU thing, again, we've also seen athletes run well just a week after getting COVID, very soon after getting COVID, but also we don't know exactly how she's responding to it. But I do wonder if this was just him, okay, these are the official explanations, but maybe there's something else at play. But credit to him for at least talking to the press and giving reasons for why they're not competing.
Oh, it's been great for us to talk about. But you see here, this is what people don't talk to the press, because you do and you just get blasted. So fascinating stuff. But this nonsense of McLaughlin getting the 400 world record. She split 47.9. That's so far off of 47.6 open. Like you got to factor in like 3/4 of a second for the relay, then maybe a full second. She's like a full second off the world record at a minimum.
Well, I think she has a better chance of getting that world record than Athing MU does of winning the Olympics in the 15.
Oh, yeah.
Way better.
Well, I want predictions from you guys. Right now, she hasn't run a step or raced a step in 2023. Athing MU, how will she do in the 1,500 meters at the U.S. Championships this year?
I'm wondering if she qualifies, was my first impression. I think she'll make the final if she doesn't make the meet. She will not be in the top 3.
I think if you're a world champion, you can automatically enter an event up or down. So I think she's into the meet. Could she backdoor her way into the final? Maybe. The bigger question to me, what do you think, John? The bigger question to me is, how does she do at Worlds? I'm going to say it right now. This isn't going well. She's not going to win the 800 at Worlds this year. I'm saying it before she even races. I'm just saying that right now.
I think it's way too early to say that. She's still my favorite for the 800 at Worlds at this point. And people, I mean, some people on the message boards, they're saying, "Oh, she's just so interested in modeling, and she's not serious about the sport." Come on, yes, she does have an interest in modeling, but the idea that she's not out there working hard, I mean, you don't just show up and win the Olympics and the world title in the 800 meters, okay? She clearly has talent, but she also works really hard. I think she's still the favorite in the 800 meters. I bet I don't think she's not training. She's out there in LA. She's still working out. She just hasn't raced yet. My prediction for the USA's, I think she makes the final on time, and I think she'll finish 8th. But I think it's more likely she misses the final than actually makes the team in the 1500 meters.
I guess one final thing. I see a lot of comments here. Here's one post. Athing needs to find a new coach. It's clear Bobby is prioritizing Syndey, wanting to avoid the 400-meter conflict. I love both Athing and Syndey and can't wait to see what they do next, but they need to recognize that Bobby may be a great coach, but it's always about him. There's a few comments about that. It's about Bobby, loves to talk about himself. I'm not that familiar with the sprint world, so if you got any details, email me. But let's keep this show rolling.